Welcome to Tom Myers versus the rest of the world. The Kentucky Derby took place this past weekend. It's a weekend of fancy dress, heavy drinking, and a lot of partying for only 2 minutes of pleasure. Basically, it's like NBC Sports broadcast my love life. Both the hearing judge and Georgia's Secretary of State say Marjorie Taylor Greene can appear on the ballot and run for re-election to her seat in Congress. It's unclear at this point as to whether she'll run to represent her constituents or her lizard overlords. Former Defense Secretary Mark Esper said Trump reportedly wanted to shoot cruise missiles into Mexico to eliminate the drug labs there by claiming it could be done quietly. Donald Trump doesn't know how to do anything quietly. This was a man who would go on Twitter and brag if he ever copped a turd that was covered in solid gold. Republicans want to advance legislation that would put warning labels on TV programming that features homosexual or transgender lifestyle. Like if they use those criteria, then every TV network that includes coverage of a GOP rally where the would-be candidates praise Trump legally must include footage of the obligatory warning being created by a skywriting plane. Assateague Island here in Maryland is moving one of its horses out because it's reportedly too aggressive. It's so aggressive that the only appropriate place for it is the bestiality section on Pornhub. And now on with the show. Please join me in welcoming Abby Mello and Davine Kerr.
Hello.
Hey, Tom.
So what's been up with the both of you this week?
I have 2 kids and both separate teachers keep on sending us emails needing tissue boxes. Apparently for some sort of science project, but every time I read your son and tissue, I keep on thinking, oh my God, what did they do at school? But so that was startling. But aside from that, not much going on this week.
And that's not the sort of imagery that we tolerate on this podcast. Abby, how about yourself?
After Tom just discussed bestiality, right? Yeah. Now, I gotta tell you, Tom, that opening monologue hit all my trigger points. You're going to start with animal abuse. Don't get me started on the Kentucky Derby. And then he brought up Trump. And then he brought up trumping on LGBTQ rights. And I mean, seriously, Tom, you've got me fired up and we haven't even talked about abortion yet.
I'm doing my job.
Making a bunch of women angry.
Is that what I'm feeling? I was repressed. I didn't know how to express it yet.
The Taliban in Afghanistan issued a decree that all women must cover their entire faces. Interesting. I didn't know Samuel Alito was moonlighting. The only thing more disgusting than watching the sausage making take place in Congress is the continuous display of the sausage fest taking place in the Supreme Court. In some of the most vocal factions of the Republican Party, there are men who have no qualms about openly telling women what they should be able to do with their own bodies, even though they have no qualms about being unable to control their own bodily functions. It's no surprise that Brett Kavanaugh voted to overturn Roe versus Wade, as he was accused of trying to get inside multiple women's uteri during his confirmation hearing. The only benefit of this ruling is that when it was leaked, every incel comic who tends to comment dudes rock on social media stayed radio silent for about 3 days, the last vestige of pleasure on Twitter before Elon Musk's takeover. Joining us tonight to discuss the SCOTUS draft ruling, please welcome Alyson, Chadwick, and Charlotte Parker.
Woo-hoo.
Hey, everybody.
Alyson, welcome back. Charlotte, welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Alyson, I imagine you have some thoughts on the events of the past week with regard to the Supreme Court.
Oh, absolutely. I think number one, this isn't the number one thing, but I do hope this helps the Democrats keep both the House and the Senate this fall. That was one of my first thoughts. But 2, there's a lot of other rulings that can go by the wayside if this is the final decision. This also takes down Casey, which takes down all of, the LGBTQ rights. It takes down the contraception that can be made illegal now, or would be. So it's got tentacles that go way farther than abortion.
The midterms, they're 6 months away. So, you would hope that it would stay in the news cycle for that long, but admittedly, it might not, especially with, inflation, whatever happens with COVID, more cases of that are going up. And then like, is it just is the key thing to just go ahead and keep maybe this one issue on the forefront, despite anything else that might be going on?
It won't be this one issue. It'll be, if Roe falls, you're going to have 13 states, abortion becomes immediately illegal. Then you'll have press coverage of all the other states that are going to pass those same laws. And there'll be other news stories around this. So I don't think this just ends with June.
And I think this is going to have just as much success as prohibition did in stopping people from drinking alcohol, in that people are going to be a lot more sneaky about going to do this thing anyway, now that it's outlawed. So yeah, I guess good job, Supreme Court. Like, they're not actually.
Yeah, if history is any indicator, then like prohibition, it'll go ahead and take what, 12, like more than 10 years at least to right this wrong. I feel better already.
I just wonder
the speakeasy style abortion clinic, so we have to know a password and knock, and that's not funny. That's just sad.
Well, I wonder if the Supreme Court justices who told the Senate that they would go by stare decisis and keep Roe, I wonder if that was perjury.
Yeah, that's definitely something to consider. Charlotte, welcome to the show. Glad you could join us.
I'm glad I could join on such a fun topic.
Oh yeah, well, it just so happens this was a last minute booking. Tells you how kick-ass I am at being a host and a producer. Very modest of me. So you actually live in Texas, like you were raised in Texas. So I imagine.
No, I wasn't raised in Texas. I was raised in Connecticut, but moved here for college. So I've been here about 10 years now, actually.
Okay.
But
regardless, you've seen this battle kind of up front.
Yeah,
it's more local news than anything. Yeah.
For sure. I'm in one of the states that will for sure ban abortion immediately if this goes through. It's interesting because I am in I'm near Dallas. I'm in a suburb just outside of Dallas, and I'm in Dallas now. I work in Dallas. So I'm in a somewhat more liberal part of Texas, not like Austin liberal, but still, Austin is so liberal that I go there and I'm like, whoa, okay, hold up, I'm liberal but not that liberal. So Dallas is sort of it's more liberal than you would think of Texas. So at least I'm not in a small town in East Texas right now. I think that'd be a different story. So I'm still sort of in a bubble, but I'm also hyper aware that I'm in Texas and that the state laws are not going to reflect what I'm seeing locally. So
of course, every single episode of this podcast we've done on Zoom, and I should note that Charlotte is actually joining us. She's in, I think, a coffee house or something. She's in a public place in Texas right now.
Yeah.
So this is the perfect topic to discuss in Texas.
Oh, this is a great thing to discuss in a Texas Starbucks.
Did you take a good look around, make sure there's no red hats behind you before you start talking about this topic?
Yeah, I did do it. Red hat. Yes.
The SCOTUS draft ruling is the most outrageous that Republicans have been about a leak since the discovery of a tape of Donald Trump and Russian hookers. In these clips from C-SPAN, we can see the different reactions of the two Senate leaders and their different approaches to the Supreme Court's draft ruling.
Mr. President, this is a dark and disturbing morning for America. Last night, a report disclosed that a conservative majority of the United States Supreme Court is ready to overturn Roe v. Wade and uproot decades of precedent affirming a woman's right to an abortion. If this report is accurate, the Supreme Court is poised to inflict the greatest restriction of rights in the past 50 years, not just on women, but on all Americans. Under this decision, our children will have less rights than their parents. Now that the court is poised to strike down Roe, it is my intention for the Senate to hold a vote on legislation to codify the right to an abortion in law.
For years, the radical left has attacked the institution of the Supreme Court. Last night, it appears their campaign hit a new low. Historically, the justices, clerks, and staff have prized and protected the court's confidentiality. The justices must be able to discuss and deliberate in an environment of total trust and privacy. Americans cannot receive a fair trial if politicians, pundits, bullies, and mobs get a say in court. This lawless action should be investigated and punished to the fullest extent possible. The fullest extent possible. I'm certain the Chief Justice will seek to get to the bottom of this. If a crime was committed, the Department of Justice must pursue it completely.
Because we all know that, like, the big bastion of liberal activism in this country is clerks of judges, most of whom were appointed by Republican presidents. I mean, the mental gymnastics that someone like Mitch McConnell has to do to try and retain what power he has, and in his case, attempt to get more in the future. I mean, it's baffling. I mean, it would be commendable if it weren't for such a serious topic.
Seriously, the irony of pulling out some kind of moral like code when you're talking about taking away rights from more than half of the population. And, it's like, you don't get, that's not a high ground you get to stand on right now, sir.
Yeah, he's more worried about invading the privacy of the judges rather than, 50% of the world or the country.
Well, what's that saying? If public opinion isn't with you, go with the facts. If facts are with you, go with public opinion. If neither is with you, pound the table. That's what he's doing. It's just, I don't want to talk about abortion. I want to talk about the leak because he's got nothing else.
Right. Because he can't say, yeah, I'm actually all for this. So to be like, oh, we shouldn't have heard about this anyway. It's like, okay, but that's not the main issue here.
Yeah, I think they've overstepped, because I would think if I've been working on the anti-abortion side for decades, I'd be like, yay, we won. But they're not talking about that way. They're all the leak. It's bad.
This is like when someone goes through their partner's phone and finds out that they're cheating on them, and then the other person is like, well, why were you going through my phone?
Yes.
Of my privacy.
But you're right. The irony of going after being upset about privacy being breached when you're throwing out a case that's based on privacy. Yeah,
they're telling us what to do is the body of this court. Is that a phrase? Like,
if they're really concerned about privacy, they need to be, I don't know if who's on this panel has heard about like your period tracker apps and how they've basically sold all of that data, and we'll be able to figure out when you miss your period and go anywhere near Planned Parenthood.
Yeah, we care about your privacy. Stay the fuck out of my vagina then.
That is terrifying.
Yeah, they care about the privacy of specifically the Supreme Court justices. And
no, they care about the privacy of white, straight, cis men. That's what they care about.
Yeah, and women if they're Republican.
Yeah.
Barely.
I just realized how much Mitch McConnell sounds like the Jimmy Stewart in It's a Wonderful Life. Like if he'd really gone downhill,
Like if he just overdosed on Xanax, basically.
Right, and just like never been visited by that angel, but also never jumped off the bridge. He just became a really bitter old man.
He looks like a turtle and he speaks like a turtle too.
Yeah,
He's a turtle.
I love turtles and find that highly offensive.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Jeez, Abby, we're hitting all of our trigger points tonight.
Just
Like,
assuming you don't insult or hurt any animals, or you're going to catch my ire.
While it can be argued that the striking down of Roe versus Wade will lead to women's rights being taken back to the Dark Ages is mere hyperbole, past legal writings and scholastic studies show it might be true, as explained in this clip.
If you are using deeply rooted in this nation's history as the basis for what you think is right and just, then you are lost. You are morally lost. Samuel Alito reaches back to legal writings in 17th century England to show that the right to abortion services is not deeply rooted in our history. He cites Sir Edward Coke, writing in 1644 that abortion is a crime. In 1644 in England, they were still having witch trials, ending in the execution of the convicted witches. And Sir Edward Coke helped English law define witches when he rewrote English law in 1604 to make it even more cruel in witchcraft trials. He wrote, "A witch is a person who hath conference with the devil to consult with him or to do some act." So Samuel Alito is quoting approvingly the 1644 judgment on abortion of an English aristocrat who said a witch is a person who has conference with the devil. Samuel Alito is reaching back 4 centuries to use Sir Edward Coke as a moral authority on abortion, a man who believed in witches and believed they were working with the devil and believed that witches should be murdered by the state, and he helped make sure that they were murdered by the state in England. Samuel Alito needs to talk to the clerk working for him who found that reference to Sir Edward Coke and get that erased from his draft opinion.
I, for one, can't wait to hear that conversation. I hope there is a recording of it. Because, you know,
I hope it gets leaked.
That'd be awesome.
Because you know how, like when you were in school and you always finished up that assignment at the last minute, it's like, I got to find a pin. I got to find a pin. Okay, this guy sounds good, but you don't like do any of the work beforehand. And instead of just being embarrassed in the front of your class on presentation day, or, you know, when you get your grade, you know, your mistake is basically just pointed out on national cable primetime television.
Right, but then we weren't being paid. So
I just appreciate the entire argument, which is like, look, everybody, misogyny has been around for centuries. It's like, we have been trying to control women's bodies forever. What should make now any different?
I also love, if that's the most recent argument they could find that supports what they're doing, like maybe readjust, you know? Also, I love that this guy they're quoting is like, okay, it's fine to kill adult women who may or may not be able to do magic, just not fetuses that aren't fully formed into babies yet.
What worries
Like,
me is that there's, you know, women couldn't even get their own credit cards in the United States until 1974 when a law had to be passed.
And they definitely couldn't get one in the 1600s. I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, they didn't have them back then. But I think that we take a lot of things for granted, and that this could really unravel a lot of rights for everybody.
I don't get who they think this is benefiting. Like, I would love to see them try to defend this. Because, like, who are they saving here by doing this? Like, who do they think they're helping? That's what I want to know. Because they're not helping.
I mean, not to point out the obvious, but unborn babies.
Yeah. I mean,
well, no, but right. But then it's like, okay, so then cool. So then
that's why we have on
babies are
Abby.
born-
She's the college professor here. She
So
helps explain these complex issues.
So then I assume they're also gonna like expand opportunities for daycare. And,
Yeah, they don't. You know, once
No,
the baby is
they're
born,
not-
it's like forget about it. You know.
yeah, the fetus is what matters. The baby, someone else can take care of.
Except the fetus doesn't matter, or they would have prenatal care.
They won't even let you
yeah.
call it a fetus. They don't even want you to call it a fetus. It's already a baby at 1 week old, you know, like because the school system has failed them. You know?
So then it should, you know, qualify for all of the services that are for women and infant children,
Yeah.
right? If it's
Right,
already
yeah.
a baby,
Yeah, true.
You get food stamps.
get it that government cheese.
This isn't to say that all women are thrilled about the prospect of most of the American population wanting the protections afforded in Roe versus Wade codified into law. As we can see in this clip of an exchange between New Hampshire Republican State Senator Susan DeLumas and pro-choice protesters.
Shame on you! Shame on you! Shame on all of you! Shame on you killing babies!
Now, I know from experience in working in politics that usually when they're at public events like this, or where they're interacting with people, they usually have like one or two staffers or aides with them. Like I can just imagine like one of the aides who's with her is just saying something is just thinking something along the lines of, "Oh, that went well."
Her chanting, "You're the murderer, you're the she's the murderer." You know how many women are gonna die from this?
Yeah, good call.
You know, it's because it's not because the abortion, it's not gonna go away. It's just that it's not gonna be safely practiced, you know. So
nobody actually thinks that abortion would go away if made illegal. I actually got into a debate with a priest once. I didn't know he was a priest. He wasn't wearing that outfit. But I convinced him that abortion should not be illegal.
He was an undercover priest.
No, then at the end, I was like, "Oh, Father Timothy," and I'm like, "I didn't know you were a priest. I wouldn't have had that conversation had I." But I did convince him abortion shouldn't be illegal. So.
Oh, nice,
impressive. Now I just like that. She's the reverse Oprah. She's like, "And you're going to hell, and you're going to hell, and you're a murderer."
Look under your seat. Hell is already opening, you know.
But if you listen to Amy Comey Barrett, she'll say, "Well, you can just drop that kid off somewhere when after you give birth. Just drop him."
Oh my God.
It's only 9 months of your life. You can. That's fine.
Yeah, that kid won't be bitter at all.
No big.
Or like after you may or may not die of preeclampsia or any other number of things that might happen to you in your third trimester.
Right. And if the kid has any disabilities whatsoever, it's fine.
And then once it's born, you know, you can't have time off because fuck the kid, you know.
Right.
Just go right back to work. You'll be fine. Take a salt pill and walk it off.
Yeah, the baby doesn't even know it's mommy's son. It's back in the daycare already. He's like, you know, whose boobie is this?
Well, they're not okay. Having worked in a daycare, I can say that they should not be. They're not just shoving boobs in the kid's face. Like,
no, but compared to any other country, though, I mean, I thought Canada was bad with only 1 year of maternity leave, but here, moms literally go back after 2 weeks. All right.
Oh, a year would be great. Yeah.
Yeah. But like 2 weeks is barely time for like sleep training. I'm a mom of 2 kids. Breastfeeding, it didn't even latch properly yet. It didn't even have the mustard shit yet in the diaper, you know, and then it's already like in the crib daycare with I'm like, to me, that's like crazy.
That's even if you take the baby out of equation, you need more than that time just to recover from like the surgery aspect of it.
Yeah.
Let alone taking care of the child you just birthed.
You can't even have sex with your husband yet because you're still healing, but you have to go back to work. It makes no sense.
Right.
I mean, it is interesting that that gets brought up because like we like to think of the United States as this super advanced, you know, industrialized world power, yet we're so far behind the rest of other westernized countries. I mean, we don't offer so many weeks of unplanned leave. We really don't have like a nationalized health insurance plan for everybody yet. I mean, and now we're going backwards, it seems, with this ruling or would be ruling to basically third world countries.
We have the highest maternal mortality rate in the world for industrialized countries. So yeah.
Highest C-section also because doctors just plan it for their lunch breaks, you know, because apparently no woman is able to give birth. We're not designed, we're flawedly designed. America's like, nope, C-section. I don't know anybody who, just in my close network, who gave birth vaginally. And I think that's very alarming, you know.
Yeah, that is.
That's interesting. I know someone that used it. I didn't know it was like a lazy talk.
Planned induction, I see a lot of too. So if it's not, and then sometimes that ends in C-section anyway.
I found out recently that some countries also don't have like a limited number of sick days with your job. Like that's just not a thing. You're just like, how many sick days do I have? Like, no, if you're sick, you're sick. Just let us know you're sick. Like, it's not like with America. It's like, no, you're only allowed to be sick 3 times, and after that, deal with it. Like, and come in anyway.
You know, in some countries in Europe, after a woman gives birth, they even get complimentary pelvic floor training, and it's part of their health care, so that woman can retone back themselves. Because here, seriously, like it's so taboo and women are embarrassed, but most moms give birth and then they cannot sneeze without pissing themselves anymore, and nobody addresses it.
Right.
There's that too.
That sounds like something a pervy coworker would offer. Like, hey, give me some pelvic floor training after you give birth. Over my cubicle. Like,
American ingenuity at its finest. In an interview with the Christian Broadcasting Network, Donald Trump said nobody has done more for Christianity and religion of all types than him. His statement makes sense because when most people think of Trump, they think, oh, Jesus Christ, Mother of God. It's easy to forget that during his time as a New York real estate developer, he was not always set in his ways about Christian values. As this excerpt from a 2004 interview on the Howard Stern show shows us.
She's on the pill. Yeah.
You fell for that one time before.
I did. That happened. Darling, I'm so happy. We're about to have a child. I said, excuse me? I didn't know about that.
Right.
But, at the time, it was like, excuse me, what happened? And then I said, well, what are we going to do about this? She said, oh, are you serious? This is the most beautiful day of our lives. I said, oh, great.
I'm shocked. Donald Trump only thinking of himself in a situation like that?
I'm
kid
shocked,
was that?
stunned, and deeply saddened.
Do we know which of his children that was? Was that one that we never hear about?
That was they were talking about Tiffany. Ironically
Tiffany.
enough,
So yeah,
the one Trump who's managed to stay out of all this shit.
you
Yeah,
know
because
what?
he doesn't
That's
have any
the thing.
contact with her. Yeah, you would never say that about what's the other one? The tall blonde
Ivanka?
one, Ivanka. Yeah,
Ivanka.
because he's in love with her. He'd been like, "And that was the greatest," and then she turned into the sexiest, most beautiful, sexy woman.
He's so gross. He's so
And that's
gross.
when he became the next Woody Allen. Yeah. I love, this is a great start to like Tiffany's evil backstory though. It's like from the minute I was conceived, I was unwanted. Like I can just see it now,
To give you the next Marvel superhero.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like you will pay attention to me, father. What's my name? Yeah.
In conclusion, if you log on to Amazon by going to smile.amazon.com and pick a charity of your choice, then a certain portion of all your purchases will go to said charity. For nearly a year now, my charity of choice has been Planned Parenthood of Greater Texas. I'm not saying that what I do will solve all the world's ills, but I am doing my part as someone who doesn't, say, own a worldwide corporation and yet still manages to avoid paying any income taxes. It does seem ironic that the substandard hardware podcast recording equipment that I purchased is helping to provide some basic support for basic medical care and is not coming directly from the multimillionaire adulterer who tried to shoot a penis-shaped rocket out of orbit and therefore failed to fuck space. In many ways, I have my thumb on the pulse of the great American public who are slowly becoming averse to people with lots of money, telling those with no money how they should be living their lives and making do. It's not just Jeff Bezos, but other rich people who insist on making this country better by bragging about the things they do that affect the few rather than, I don't know, feeding people and making sure they have health care. Elon Musk this week came out and said that if he died under mysterious circumstances, that it was nice knowing us all. See, when he dies, I'm going to do what I always do when every other divisive, power-seeking millionaire dies. I'm going to think, should I have a muffin or a donut with my coffee this morning? And on that note, that's our show. I want to thank Abby Mello, Davine Kerr, Alyson Chadwick, and Charlotte Parker. This episode was written and hosted by Tom Myers with panelists Abby Mello and Davine Kerr and guests Alyson Chadwick and Charlotte Parker. Theme music by Jeroen Vandenhurk. Executive producers Tom Myers, Matt Connarton for ipmNation, and Eddie Carson for Odyssey Radio. Thank you for listening, and please visit tommyers.us.